So I've decided to build my own bike from the frame up with little to no experience and using almost entirely Chinese parts. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I'm going. Oh my God, oh bloody hell, oh bloody,
Just like Derek Delboy Trotter jumped off the edge of a cliff into the unknown without a clue what he was doing. This week I put down $799 of my own hard-earned cash. Well, I emailed it via PayPal to a Chinese email address. And in return, I hope to receive a custom painted carbon gravel frame on which I plan to screw, bolt and mount components sourced almost exclusively from the Chinese Amazon, AliExpress.
Did I? What a wally.
Now, just for clarity, I am not a bike mechanic or in any way familiar with building or repairing bikes. I'm a complete novice to cycling in general. I can probably change a puncture if I had to. And yeah, I have removed the rear cassette from my current bike in order to degrease it so that I could use a wax chain. But that's really about it. That's my exposure to working on bikes. I only started cycling about 3 years ago during COVID, and living in Ireland, I actually spend most of my time indoors on Zwift, which is mostly what you'll find on my channel. That said, I've fallen in love with outdoor riding. I've done numerous sportives around Ireland over the last sort of 3 summers, and last year I had the privilege of being able to bring my own bike to the cycling mecca of Mallorca to tackle such great routes as Sacalabra and the Formentor Lighthouse. As a result, a new item has entered onto my bucket list, which I plan to tackle this year, and that's to build my own bike from the ground up. I want to understand more about my bike and how it works, so that should I have a mechanical while out riding, I might be able to do at least a bodge fix on the side of the road in order to get myself home. And as challenging as doing this will be already, with no bike building experience, I decided I may as well use this opportunity to see if the Chinese market has moved beyond its old stereotype of supplying low quality tat for cheap.
Will not break. Will not. It broke.
And if it now supplies quality and value for money. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
I suppose, all right, this is my punishment, isn't it? Spend the rest of my life in this wheelchair.
Still, could have been worse, still.
How?
My gran had one with a squeaky wheel.
So this is not necessarily a how-to video. It's more of a here's what I did video. If you would love to take on a similar project but have no idea where to start, this might give you some food for thought and some direction on how to go about it.
You know, I mean, if I can help somebody as I go along my way, my living will not have been in vain. That is my motto.
So to that end, I've created a flowchart that gives you an idea of my decision-making process. You see, before I can even get to building, I first have to decide and order the required parts. And that alone is a task that probably seems way too daunting in itself. I mean, the bike industry really needs to take a close look at itself. Talk about options and varieties. The chart contains links to all the parts I ordered and some videos that I recommend watching that helped me immensely. And the entire thing is time-stamped or chapter marked or whatever the young people are calling it these days. Now, more accomplished bike builders and mechanics might well get a laugh at times and hold their head in their hands and roll their eyes. Please comment below if there are any helpful suggestions or tips that you have, or if you have identified anything that I have done wrong. But please be nice about it. Don't be angry or hateful or go on the attack. It's my money, not yours. And I'm fully aware that there will most likely not be plain sailing, and there's going to be plenty of ups and downs along the way.
Going up and down and up and down. Be just like the Big Dipper. Woo! Oh, God.
Okay, so it turns out that if you want to build a bike, you're not going to get very far unless you have some parts to build with. So the first thing you're going to have to do is order some parts, and that's the money spendy bit. So that can be the difficult bit. And I can see why straight away that's going to put an awful lot of people off wanting to take on a project like this, because there is nothing standard in the cycling industry. There are so many varieties and options and sizes and suppliers and so on and so forth that straight away you can be overwhelmed. And that's the reason I created this flowchart. Try and help simplify the process and break it down into stages, sort of bite-sized pieces, to make the whole selection process a bit easier. So I decided early on that I did want to go the route of ordering everything from the Chinese market, as I've mentioned already. And I've linked here. Now, this entire flowchart will be linked below, so you can click on this whenever you want, and you'll have access to all this and all these links, and you can watch all these videos and everything in your own time. Essentially, what you've got here is about 3 or 4 weeks worth of my research boiled down into this flowchart with these links, and hopefully we'll pour through this in about 20 or 30 minutes. I'm just going to do mostly overviews. I'm not going to go too deep into stuff, but just to give you an idea of my thinking process and how I arrived at the decisions I arrived at and why I ordered what I ordered. So first up, because I was going to be, or one of the reasons why I decided that I would purchase from the Chinese market is after watching some of these videos. So again, if you want to go the same route, it might be worth your while watching these to get some sort of comfort or get some sort of encouragement that you're not flushing your money down the toilet, but there actually might be some value for money in the Chinese market at the moment with what they're providing. So in this first video, Hambini, he takes one of these gravel frames or a bike frame from China, carbon frame, cuts it in half and has a look inside. So a lot of guys are sticking these scopes down inside to have a look, but he actually cuts the bike in half and takes a look inside to see does it look as good on the inside as it does on the outside. And it was encouraging to see the results of that video. The Ribble Valley cyclist, he has a very detailed look at a set of wheels, and the results from that were also very encouraging. And he also did a Chinese carbon gravel bike build from beginning to end, and another great video that I benefited an awful lot from. I'd encourage anyone to watch that. Then we have Trace Velo and Jordan Coleman. The two of these guys, well, this is what they do. They go on and they purchase bicycle parts from AliExpress and Chinese market in general, throw them on their bikes, ride their bikes, come back and review, and basically give you an idea of what's good, what's bad, and what's in between. So a lot of information on both of their channels. I've just linked 2 of the videos. And again, if you're going this route, they're definitely worth a view. Specific to me then was these 2 YouTubers, Henry Chung Fitness and Patrick Lino. And the reason I was so interested in them is because I had decided that I was going to go with a gravel frame, because a gravel frame is just perfect for me, really. It's comfortable, it goes everywhere. I don't find I'm struggling to keep up on the flats with groups whenever I'm out on sportives. I can climb fairly well on it. Going down, because again, I'm not cycling that long, my bike handling skills aren't going to be that great. But going downhill, I feel a lot more comfortable on the wider tire. Running the lower pressure, I'm just more comfortable. So yeah, all around, a gravel bike just suits me down to the ground. I tried a road bike before, and after 50, 60, 70k into a sportive, I was just getting uncomfortable on the bike. I wasn't happy. But the gravel bike I found just suited me perfectly. So that's definitely the route I wanted to go.
Yeah, good all-rounder. You know what I mean?
So having decided that, I narrowed it down to a GR201. I found these 2 videos then of both these guys doing builds from the frame up using the same frame. So yeah, I learned a lot from those videos, and it was great to see what they ended up with at the end. And if I end up with anything half as good as what they ended up with, I'd be very happy. But they're at this an awful lot longer than I am, and they're obviously far more accomplished than I am. So I'd be doing well to follow in their footsteps, but definitely worth a view. So yeah, I have already decided my frame. I've already purchased my frame, purchased it from a company called Tantan. There's the link there. That takes you to their webpage, and specifically the frame I've ordered, and has all the geometry, all their measurements, pictures of the carbon frame without any paint on it, and so on and so forth. Plenty of information there. So I've ordered that. It comes with a seat post, comes with a fork, comes with handlebars. I got a custom paint job on mine, and I think the whole lot was $7.99, and that's including postage and delivery. And I think I've got the true axles with that as well. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So once I decided on my frame, that was basically everything is going to have to be hanging on that now. So the next thing in my mind logically was to decide on the drivetrain, and I narrowed it down to, well, in my mind there is only 2 options, 1x and 2x. Let's not even talk about a 3x system. So I've linked some pros and cons, some reading if you fancy reading up about it. There's a couple of videos there which I've just stuck in there as well. You can watch them. There's a kind of an overview, which is not my findings, but that's something I came across online, which kind of reviewed which is better, 1 by versus 2 by. And of course, the answer is there is no right or wrong. There is no better. It's just everyone's individual use, what they're going to find works for them. So you might see something there and go, well, that's a necessity for me, or I don't want to be putting up with that. And that might make your mind up. But for me, it was always going to be a 1 by system because I've already got a 2 by system. I feel that the 1 by system, I've always wanted to try it out. It should be easier for the build. It should give less problems. It will be cheaper to install. And as well as that, I think it just looks cool. And at the end of the day, when it comes to cycling, a lot of it just boils down to that, doesn't it? So for me, yeah, 1 by system. If you're going 2 by system, those are essentially the options that you'll have. I mean, I'm generalizing, but that's what it'll boil down to. Standard, compact, semi-compact, or subcompact gravel cranksets. They generally come, you buy them in those kind of packages or combinations. Again, you can do your own research and looking into that, but that's where I would start. In my case, I was going with the 1 by, so I had to decide what size front chainring do I want and then what size rear cassette do I want. Front chainring, again, I ran into a problem with this, or I learned something new, let's put it that way. I can't just decide what front chainring I want to put on. So I wanted to put on a 48 or a 50 on the front because I want to be able to keep up on the flats with a lower cadence. But as it turns out, because I bought a gravel frame is built to accommodate a wider tire on the rear than a normal road bike. So a gravel frame will be built to accommodate anything up to 50 millimeters on the rear. In order to do that, the chainstays as they come out of the bottom bracket have to widen out quite quickly to allow for that tire size, whereas a road bike doesn't have to widen out that much at all. So because on a gravel bike they widen out so quickly, the chainring you can then fit on is going to be restricted by the width of, the chainring you can fit on is going to be restricted by the width or the speed at which that chainstay widens out. And so, yeah, it seems like I might only be able to fit a 44 tooth chainring on the front of mine. So that decision's kind of been made for me. So with that in mind, that then helps me decide on what size rear cassette I want to get, the kind of combination I want to have there, which we'll come to in a second. So a couple of things to keep in mind there. So having decided on those kind of things, have them written down and I've made my mind up, the next thing we come to is the dreaded bottom bracket.
Right. Now brace yourself, Rodney. Brace yourself.
Now I'm going to simplify this for you very easily. You could spend ages researching bottom brackets, looking into it, going back to the 1900s and the history of bottom brackets and what's the best bottom bracket ever made and what's the best bottom bracket I should have and what's the most reliable, all that kind of carry on. You're wasting your time and I wasted my time because at the end of the day, your bottom bracket is decided by your frame anyway. So unless you specifically want a certain type of bottom bracket for some reason, in which case then you're going to have to choose a frame based on the bottom bracket that you want.
This is classic, this is, isn't it, eh? It's the bacon and the egg situation all over again.
It's the chicken and the egg. Then.
We haven't got time to discuss food, Rodney.
Whereas I'd already chosen my frame, so all I had to do was go to the website of the manufacturer, and there it told me that the frame that I have chosen accommodates or is built to accommodate a T47 bottom bracket. That's it. That's all I need to know. That's all you're going to need to know. Whatever frame you decide on, your manufacturer will tell you what bottom bracket goes into that, and then you can just research that particular bottom bracket. So for me, it was a T47, which seems to be becoming a little bit of an industry standard by the looks of things for a few different reasons, but it's certainly gaining popularity, and going forward, it seems like a lot of frames may well have this bottom bracket in them. So that might simplify things a little bit. But I can't just go and put a T47 bottom bracket in my shopping basket. It's not quite as easy as that because, again, it's the cycling world, so there has to be variations and combinations of everything. So you need to decide on whether you're going with a SRAM dub system or you're going with a Shimano system in your drivetrain. I decided to go with SRAM dub, and the difference is it has a 29mm axle that goes into the bottom bracket. The Shimano system has a 24mm axle in diameter that goes into the bottom bracket. I decided to go with the 29mm because apparently it plays well with the T47 bottom bracket. So that just was a simple decision for me. And then even on top of that, once you've decided that, you now need to decide whether you want an internal or an external version of the T47. Again, nothing to stress over. Go to your manufacturer's website. If your bottom bracket width is 86 or 92 millimeters, then you want an internal T47i. And if your bottom bracket width is 68 or 73 millimeters, which you'll probably find more on a road bike than a gravel bike, then you'll want a T47X external. So that was my mind made up for my bottom bracket. That's actually next after the frame. This is the next thing that went into my shopping basket, a T47 29i. And there it is there in AliExpress. Again, I'm going to empty my cart here. Let me just open up this and we'll just delete all those and we'll just start from scratch here as we go along. Back here. Yeah, I'm not going to go into all the reasoning behind why I decided on these particular parts, but you know, I looked up, did a bit of research on all these parts before purchasing. I'm not saying these are the best parts. Certainly at that money, you can see it's not going to be the best bottom bracket in the world, but I think it's going to suit my needs and my purposes. It's pretty well reviewed, and for the money, I think it's worth taking a gamble on. So I'm going to add that into my cart. So that's my bottom bracket gone in there. Next up, we decide on our crankset. So what am I going to get there? So I know my axle size is 29 millimeters. My crank size, I'm going to go with 165 because I've got 172.5 on my bike, my gravel bike. There's 170 on my indoor trainer, which is fixed. I can't adjust that. And I'd like to try a 165 just to see if I can even notice the difference, to be perfectly honest with you. And does it feel better? Does it feel worse? I'm interested to try out these different things. If it doesn't work out, no problem. If it's a successful project, the plan is to build a custom bike for my wife at some time in the future, and that crank size might suit her perfectly anyway. And then the teeth, well, I know that I can only have 44 at the max, so those decisions all made for me. So with that in mind, I sourced a Cenex PR2, extremely well reviewed on any videos I looked up. You choose your crank length, choose your teeth, and I've gone for the PR2 because that's the one that has the 29 millimeter axle. And they do have a Shimano version as well. So if you decide to go Shimano, then they do have that version. I think that's called a PR3. So yeah, add that to my cart. As I say, I've done my research on that already, and I'm not suggesting that everyone else goes and buys the exact same, but that's just my decision-making process. And then as regards to cassette, same thing again. I've already looked into this. I've decided to go with a Sunshine cassette, pretty well reviewed anywhere I looked, would seem to suit my kind of usage. And it's an 11 speed, 11 to 46. So that should have me fairly well covered, considering I've got a 44 tooth chainring on the front. So I'm happy to go with that. Okay, so now we're turning on the front, but we need something to change the gears. So we have to start looking at shifters. And in the world of shifters, you've got two options. You can go electronic or you can go mechanical. So let's just have a look at briefly these two options. Electronic, in the Chinese market, there's two players, L2 and Wheeltop, both of them pretty well reviewed. They're cheaper than Shimano and SRAM, but they're still expensive. So even for the cheapest electronic group set from either of them, I think is around the €550 mark. And then it goes up, you know, you can get up 800, 850 euros if you want to go for carbon versions, if you want to go with hydraulic brakes. And yeah, there's lots of different combinations. But you can start as little as, I think, around the 550 mark for an electronic group set. It's still a lot of money, but compared to what Shimano and SRAM are charging, it's a fraction of the cost. The Chinese models also offer the ability to switch between 10 speed, 11 speed and 12 speed via the app. So as far as I'm aware, certainly currently, Shimano and SRAM do not do that. If you get an electronic group set for an 11 speed, that electronic group set will only work on an 11 speed going forward. The Chinese models give you the option to change that rear cassette, and you can just change in the app the settings for the rear derailleur. So that's fantastic that they offer that. As well as that, they offer micro adjustments on each cog on your cassette. So Shimano SRAM offer a micro adjustment for the rear as well. So if your chain is not slightly right, you can make a micro adjustment within the app, but that micro adjustment takes place across the cassette, up or down. Whereas with the Chinese models, they offer the opportunity to go in and fine tune just one cog on that cassette or one ring on that cassette. So let's say every gear is working perfectly fine. The chain is nice and smooth in every gear. It's not making a noise. It's not grinding, but just that third gear, for some reason, it's grinding. Well, you can just go to that third gear, micro adjust that. It doesn't affect any of the rest of the cassette. So that's an advantage, certainly, that they have over their two big rivals. And then the latest L2 as of 2025 is now charged via USB-C through the rear derailleur, which is a fantastic thing going forward. That, you know, USB-C is so standard, you don't have to worry about loads of different leads, or if you forget a lead when you're traveling or whatever, it's just brilliant to have that standard USB-C as a way of charging. So they're not just copying or mimicking the likes of SRAM and Shimano, but they're also being inventive themselves and coming up with these new ideas. So that's great to see. But for me, I'm going mechanical on this particular build. As I said, I wanted to learn about bikes, and I wanted to build a bike in such a way that I understand how it works, that if something goes wrong when I'm out on the road, I can do even a bodge fix or whatever it might be. So I wanted to, you know, do the mechanical. And as well as that, it's going to be a bit cheaper for this build as well. And at some time in the future, I may well get an electronic group set and fit it if everything else goes well with this project. And then I could swap the mechanical over to my wife's bike for the amount of riding that she does. That would be perfectly fine. So in the mechanical world, in the Chinese market, there's essentially two operators, L2 and Sensa, are very well reviewed. It's a toss-up between the two of them. They're pretty darn cheap for what you can get a group set for under €100. And they have mechanical and hydraulic options available for the brakes within that. Now, you will see mixed reviews on YouTube from rubbish to very good, depending on which model you choose. And what I've kind of found is, if the YouTube videos are sort of 3 or 4 years old, you'll definitely see 50-50 reviews of some rubbish examples in there. But it seems the more recent reviews going back a year or 2 years, they're definitely, the reviews are a lot more positive and consistent as they sort of, they made improvements in the different releases. So yeah, it seems we're at a point now where they're pretty reliable, they're pretty good quality, and certainly good value for money. What I would say is they're a viable option for non-competitive, non-critical applications. So what I mean by that is, I wouldn't necessarily go buying a set for €100, throw it on a bike, and then go on the holiday of a lifetime that you've planned and spent a lot of money on, trusting that this mechanical system for €100 is going to survive that trip and do everything you need it to do. Or if it was some competition that you were in or something competitive, I'd probably want to stay with something more tried and trusted and something that you can have confidence in, such as the Shimano or the SRAM. But if it's for your, you know, riding around your home, Sunday group rides or whatever it might be, even on the indoor trainer, yeah, these are definitely going to be worth taking a risk on because you can build confidence with them then over the course of a few months or whatever. And then when you've built that confidence that everything is working fine, then you might be comfortable enough to actually bring it abroad or bring it on a holiday or a trip where you're going to be relying on it. So it was a toss-up between Sensa and L2, and I decided I'm going to go with the L2. Again, I'm not going to bore you with the details of why I landed on that, but that's the setup I decided on, an L2 GR9 1x11 set, a gravel group set. I'm going to add that into the cart. So a lot of options there, and, you know, different strokes for different folks, and certainly plenty to satisfy everyone's needs. That's the non-hydraulic version I've gone to, which brings us on to the next subject, which is the brakes. So when it comes to brakes, you've got 3 options. 2 I already knew of, hydraulic and mechanical. I didn't realize there was a hybrid. So your hydraulic, the cons are it's very expensive, it can be more difficult to install, and it's not as easy to repair on the side of the road. Pros are it's definitely the best performance. Generally, they require less maintenance as they kind of self-adjust over time as brake pads and things start to wear. And they have excellent modulation and feedback. And that is what I have on the bike that I bought from Canyon. It came with a hydraulic system on it, and I've been riding it for a little over 2 years. And yeah, absolutely fantastic, no problems whatsoever. Mechanical, the cons, performance is nowhere near as sharp as the hydraulic. More input would be required in your levers. You may need more regular attention to maintain and adjust. So just stretching the cable, wearing the cable, and so on and so forth. So, you know, little bit of downside there, but the pro is that it's way cheaper than hydraulic, easier to install, and easier to repair on the side of the road if something goes wrong. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, the hybrid system. Well, the cons are it's not a full hydraulic system, so performance is not as sharp. And if the caliper oil leaks, then it's not an easy fix on the side of the road. So you still have the same kind of cons as the full hydraulic system. But the pros are it's almost full hydraulic performance at a fraction of the cost of a hydraulic installation. And it's as easy as a mechanical installation to install. So basically what it is you've still got cables running through your bike from your levers down to the brakes. But when it gets to the brakes, instead of it pulling on your normal sort of mechanical brake, it's pulling on a piston that then activates a hydraulic brake system. So essentially, you're just offsetting that hydraulic system from the lever on the handlebars down to this section here at the rear or at the front. So you still have that problem with the cable that as that slackens or stretches or it frays or whatever might happen, that's obviously going to impact the performance of your brakes. But you're kind of getting the hydraulic performance of the self-adjusting pistons and so on in the hydraulic brake caliper itself. So I've decided to try this hydraulic route. It's not too expensive to get involved in, and the installation should be way easier than a full hydraulic system, certainly for me. So that's the option I've gone with. Gets very well reviewed, reasonable price. I'm happy to give that a go. So we'll throw that into the cart. So where are we at? We've got a frame, we've got our bottom bracket, we've got our crankset, we've got our rear, we've got our chainring and cassette, we've got our shifters, and we've got our brakes. Now, wheels. I'm not going to spend any time on wheels. That is a complete other subject. My plan was to just swap the two wheels I have for my current bike across onto this frame when it arrives, so that I'm not spending more money than I need to until I'm sure everything has worked out, and then it might be worth investing in wheels. That plan slightly changed. I had something for sale that I kind of was in my shed that I was looking at thinking I'm never using that. I'll put it up for sale. It's sold. So I had a bit of extra cash disposal, and I decided, you know what, I'll save myself a bit on packaging and delivery by ordering a set of wheels from Tantan as well. So I contacted Tantan. I said, look, what's the cheapest set of gravel carbon wheels that you have? They got back to me. I think it's $400 is what we agreed on, and something like that. And that's going to be, they tagged on a few quid for postage extra, but effectively it's going to come with the frame. So I just thought, you know what, I'll do that now, save myself on some postage and packaging. I'll trust myself that this project is going to turn out well, and I'm eventually going to need wheels anyway. And for that kind of money, yeah, it's not a massive risk. I'm just going to try that. So, but yeah, the whole wheel thing, yeah, a whole other area, a whole other video. And there's plenty of other YouTubers that cover wheels and what's the best. And again, in the Chinese market, there are a lot of options at the moment. And there's 2 or 3 that are particularly, I think ICANN, and the name of the other one won't come to me, but I'll flash it up in the edit. They seem to, Elite Wheels. They seem to be extremely well reviewed and have extremely good value for money. But as you'll know, you can spend as much on wheels as you would on the frame itself. So it really is an endless subject. So I'll just leave that for now. I do have a set of wheels coming, ordered from Tantan as well, but I don't really have any special reviews about them, or no one's covered them or anything like that. I'm just trusting that if Tantan are making quality frames, I'm hoping they're making a quality set of carbon wheels as well. Okay, so you're also going to need a few other things to get your bike up and running. You're going to need a chain. So what I learned as well is that not all chains are the same. So if you've got a 10-speed cassette, you need a 10-speed chain, 11-speed, 11-speed chain, 12-speed, 12-speed chain. It's not just the chain length. Obviously, that does come into it. You need to take that into consideration, but the chain width. So a 10-speed is going to have a slightly wider chain than a 12-speed. So yeah, depending on what size cassette you've gone for on the rear, you're going to need to order a chain that matches that. I got a couple of chain options here. I'm not going to kind of delve too much into this. What to avoid, that's already a dead link actually. It was someone trying to sell Shimano chain, but it wasn't actually Shimano. Shimano was spelled slightly different. So you just still do need to be wary of stuff like that on AliExpress. But I think this is the chain I'm probably going to go with. There is another one as well that I'm got my eye on. I can't think of the name of it right now. Again, I'll flash it up in the edit. So, but they're around the same price. I'm just going to add that into the cart for now. Saddle, well, this is a lucky dip. I mean, you can look at saddle reviews all day long. Who's going to know what suits who? All you can do is kind of check and see, you know, do they creak? Are they reliable? Are they falling apart after a couple of months of use? Are they, yeah, just basic things like that. But as regards comfort and whether the saddle is right for you, unfortunately, you're just not going to know unless you order one and try it out and give it a chance as well. You won't even know after one ride. You're going to have to give it a few chances. What is well reviewed is this saddle, an EC90. It's cheap, gets pretty good reviews from anyone I looked at. And for that kind of money, again, if it doesn't suit me, it might suit my wife's build. So, you know, it's worth taking a punt on that, I think, to be perfectly honest with you. Bar tape, cheapest chips from AliExpress. May as well throw in some of that. And with a name like Super Sticky Kush, why wouldn't you? So I'm going with the red version of this. I'm going to throw that into my cart there. And I think I'm going to throw in a bit more bar tape as well. I'm not going to do it right now, but yeah, when it's that cheap, there's no harm in having a few bits of bar tape lying around. Sound damping cables. So my frame accommodates internal cable routing. One of the problems there is that the cables can rattle against the frame when you're riding along and you get vibrations and noise and so on, very annoying. And it's hard to kind of fix it after the build, so you're better off doing it while you're putting the bike together. So this is kind of like a foam liner that the cable goes into, and it stops that cable from rattling up against the frame. So yeah, I'm definitely getting some of that for that kind of price, and do it while I'm doing the entire build. Bottom bracket preload spacers. Yeah, I have no idea whether I'm going to need one of those or not. But some of the videos I've seen, they're using them. So for that kind of money, as I say, I'd rather be looking at it and not need it than need it and not have it. So yeah, I'm going to throw one of those into the cart. And if I need it, well and good. If I don't, it's not the end of the world. Expander bolt headset. I've linked a video there as well explaining about this. But essentially, the frame should come with an expander bolt for the fork for the headset. But apparently, some of the reviews I've seen, the bolts that come are a bit short, and a lot of guys are more comfortable with a longer bolt in their fork. So again, for the price, I'm just going to order one, and if I need it, it's there. If it's not the end of the world. Jaguar Kit Pro Shift 1. So this is compressionless cable. So because I've gone the mechanical route, I need to have brake cables and gear cables. Now, again, I didn't realize gear cables and brake cables are different. So I think the brake cables are thicker by 1 millimeter. I think it's 5 millimeters, and gear cables are 4 millimeters. And they've also got different sort of nipples at the end of them where they connect into your levers. So yeah, you have to order different cables. So I'm going to go with this Jaguar system for both the gear shifters and the brakes for this compressionless system, which apparently really aids in the feel of the brakes and how smooth the gear shifting is. It's a little bit more expensive than just going with standard brake cables. I think I can get it on Bike-In for something like 25 euros. So yeah, it's not a massive investment. And if it's going to make braking and gear changing a lot better, the only thing I did read or did see online is that it can be harder to run those cables in the internal routing system. So I'm also going to get some standard brake and gear cables. Again, they're cheap as, so I may as well have a few there just in case I do run into problems trying to run this stuff through the frame. AliExpress do have their own version of it. It's a little bit cheaper than the Jaguar stuff, so I'm not really sure if it's worth taking a risk on this. I may as well get the stuff that is recommended and well reviewed for an extra tenner. But I'll stick it into the cart for now. Rear derailleur hanger. So my frame comes with a rear derailleur hanger as far as I'm aware. I'm going to buy a spare one anyway because there's no harm to have one in your saddlebag when you're out on a ride. And the frame is also accommodating what is now becoming an industry standard in the cycling world, which is a RDH, rear derailleur hanger. No, have I got that wrong? No, UDH, Universal. Oh, I don't know. I'll flash it up on the screen. I can't remember. Too many acronyms. But basically, it seems like rear derailleur hangers, they're all becoming the same across all frames. So now, going forward, if you're out for a ride with a group and something happens, you come off, bend your rear derailleur hanger, and someone has a spare one with them, you might be able to just swap out there and then, provided you're on the newest frames. I mean, if you've got a bike that's 5 or 10 years old, it's not going to have that UDH. But the newer frames that are coming out seem to be coming with that as standard. So going forward, this should make it easier for everyone. So yeah, I'm just going to order one of those. There are some slight variations. I know that I need one with a 1 millimeter pitch for the true axle. So therefore, that does seem to be the kind of most popular one. So that's the one I'm going with there. And again, cheap at a tenner. Yeah, could be a tenner you'd be sick you didn't spend if you get caught outside someday. And then inline cable adjusters, again, they're cheap. I'm going to be working with brake cables. It's going to be no harm to have a couple of those there just in case I need them. So that's as that's where we are as far as parts goes. For the bike, let's have a look at our cart and see where we're up to. Select all items. We're up to €360, and we've got a lot of bang for our buck there, really, when you look down through it. And that's pretty much going to be everything that we need, as far as I know, to get the bike up and running. So add that to the $799, and I think it was $400. So that was that. I think it's about $1,200 for the bike, frame, wheels, handlebar, all that stuff that I got. So that's, I think that's around $1,200. So whatever that might transfer into in euros, would it be €1,100? I'm not sure. And another 360, let's call it 4. So we're up around somewhere in around the €1,500 ballpark. And that should be everything I need to have a complete bike. We still do need some other things that you may have and you may not have. Some of these I don't have, so I'm still going to have to spend a bit of money, but it's not fair to include them in the price of the overall build, because these are tools that you may well be able to use in the future. And if you buy a bike off the shelf, you ain't getting them with these tools, so you're not comparing like for like by including these in the cost of the build. So I am going to need a bottom bracket installer, but again, that option is made very easy for me because I know I'm installing a T47, so it's easy to find a tool that will install that bottom bracket for me. Carbon steerer bar cutter. You don't have to have one, but you're going to have to cut that fork to length, and this tool makes that a way easier job. It also means that you're going to get a nice clean cut, and you're going to get a very, well, it's very vertical there, but obviously when it's fitted on the bike, horizontal cut, which will be important for that whole assembly there, that's absolutely spot on. So for the sake of €25, I think that's it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Cable routing kit, this is another no-brainer. If your cables need to go internal into the bike, this will make it far easier. A magnet with a cable, pull the cable through the frame with the magnet, attach whatever you need to pull through on the other side, and pull the whole lot through. Look, you know what a cable routing system is. I don't need to explain that to you. But yeah, for that kind of money, that's definitely going in the cart as well. That's going to make life an awful lot easier. Cables, as I explained already, just in case I have problems with those compressionless cables, it'll be nice to have another set there just to get me going. Lubes, I've attached a video here to Park Tools. They go through all the different places where you're supposed to and where you shouldn't use certain types of lubes. This is one of these areas where I am a little bit concerned because, you've got grease, you've got Loctite, you've got carbon paste, you've got oil, you've got all sorts of other things going on. And what do you use where? Here's a little overview chart. Now, these references up here, if you watch the video, that's the Park Tool references to grease, the different types of grease, Loctite. I can't remember. I mean, I'm sure the letters probably actually speak for themselves if I was to stop and think about it for long enough. But yeah, effectively, that's a good little quick reference guide to look at something and figure out, oh, do I use grease there? Do I use carbon paste? And more importantly, anything with the red, well, I definitely shouldn't use that there. So I'll definitely be coming back to that myself. There's no doubt, 2 ways about it. Chain whip, I already have one. I bought a Halford's toolkit there, I don't know, a couple of years ago, just to remove the rear cassette so that I could degrease it for a waxed chain. So I have one of those, but you're going to need one of those. Torque wrench, definitely going to need a torque wrench, especially if you're working on a carbon frame. You're going to have to be torquing things to the manufacturer's recommendations. If you over torque, to be honest with you, you're almost hoping if you over torque, you hear a crack and you know you've done damage, as opposed to not hearing something, but you've weakened something or done some kind of damage that you're going to find out about when you're out riding on the bike. The way to avoid all that is by having a torque wrench, and then if you torque to the manufacturer's specifications, you shouldn't have any of those problems. But yeah, if you're working on a carbon frame, don't even go near it without a torque wrench. And then a bike stand, which I'm presuming if you own a bike, most likely have a bike stand. I got one just for cleaning the bike, so not something I need to purchase at this moment in time, but definitely going to be something I'm going to need. So there it is, an overview. I'm not sure how long that took. I tried to get through it as quick as I could, just to give you a kind of an insight into my thinking and the process I went through, put up the research that I came across. And in your own time, if this is a project you want to take on, that information is there and you can go through it in a more detailed fashion, follow all the links and spend a bit more time getting more familiar. As I say, to a lot of people that might be watching this, they might think this is all just obvious and simple and a no-brainer. I might be laughing at me for some of the obvious things I've pointed out. But listen, I didn't know half of this stuff 3 weeks ago. And it's taken me that amount of time every night, watching videos, reading, to try and figure out what it is I need to buy and what it is I need to have in order to be able to complete this project. I didn't want to find myself in a situation where I have some stuff and then I have to wait 3 weeks for something else to arrive before I can move on to the next step. I kind of am hoping that I've thought of everything, and that when everything arrives, hopefully within a month, I'm thinking, judging by what I'm reading online, that I'll have everything I need and everything will fit and be compatible. So that's all to be seen. If anyone has any thoughts or observations or has noticed something obvious that I've missed or I've gotten wrong, as I said, please mention in the comments. Just be polite and nice about it. If anyone found it helpful, or if anyone is encouraged to take on a similar project because of what they've seen here, then I'd love to hear about that as well. And yeah, as I say, as parts start coming in and things start arriving, I'll record the unpackaging and the reveals. And then as I start building, I'll try and record as much of that as I can and give some feedback onto how everything is going. And fingers crossed, everything goes well and I end up with a nice bike at the end of it.
Well, rather him than me, he's walking straight into the unknown.